Perfect. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we will be discussing professional emails, how to basically create these emails, what we should and should not be doing. And then, of course, at the end, we will have some time for you to be able to ask any questions or concerns, whether it be about professionally emailing or anything else job search related. So I will go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Tiffany. I have worked with Devant for almost 1 year so far. And my other job that I work at full time, it is very similar to this. I do facilitation in regards to employment. I have an active caseload that I support with securing employment. Um, and I work very closely with one of our programs who supports junior data analysts with finding work. So as we know, with the market, with the labor market, how it's been going, there's lots of changes to stay up to date with. It's become a little bit more competitive, so we're always trying to find interesting and unique ways to obtain employment. But yeah, if you ever feel like you want to connect on LinkedIn or book a session, please feel free. And I will go ahead and hand it over to Katerina.
Thanks, Tiffany. Hi everyone, my name is Katerina. I've been in HR for over 6 years now, and I've worked with Devant as a career coach for I think over like 4 years. I'm very excited to be here today and answer any questions that you might have about anything. I know that we will be talking about professionalism and like emails, but we'll be happy to answer in the end any questions about the job search or resume if we have time.
Perfect. So just a few house rules before we get into our content. So you all are muted right now. But if you do feel like you want to be unmuted to ask your question, please feel free to go ahead. You can also leave your camera off if you feel more comfortable with that. If you joined in the beginning, you might have seen or heard that little notification stating that the session is being recorded, and you will be receiving this through email as well. Any questions that you have, we have the Q&A option down here. So you can input your questions there, or you could type them in the chat as well, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. And then in regards to any future sessions, you can access them there on our website. I do highly encourage attending. It's, every person who facilitates, every workshop that takes place, they're different and you might learn something differently, to support you in your job search process. Perfect. So just going over our agenda for this evening. First, we will be going over the expectations of creating this email, 5 things to check before hitting send. We'll go over a few examples of what a good versus bad LinkedIn message might look like. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, we will leave some time at the end for questions that you may have regarding your job search. Perfect. So on the slide here, it's just talking about the importance of remaining professional when communicating with recruiters, whether this be through LinkedIn or even through email. So it really can make the difference between receiving a rejection letter or even landing an offer. So just, we'll be going over a few examples, like I stated as well. So the next slide talks about the expectation. So what exactly does it mean to have or create a professional email? So first of all, we want to ensure that we are doing our research, whether that be on the person that we're emailing, whether that be on the company. We want to ensure that we have a very clear subject line. Sometimes in my work, I've received emails where there is no subject line at all, but it's there for us to use. It does really make a difference. It could be something that captures someone's attention, especially if you are reaching out for the first time. We want to ensure that we are using a formal and personalized greeting, and of course, keeping it concise as well. All right. Next, we want to make sure that we are using a professional tone and attach necessary documents. So when we say necessary documents, I'm hoping in this case we are talking about a resume, we're talking about a cover letter if requested. Sometimes I've had clients say, I'm interested in this job. And then in my email to them, I've requested their resume, but then they did not attach it. So unfortunately, they end up missing out on the opportunity because that attachment was not there by the time I had requested that from them. They had responded too late. So unfortunately, that opportunity was missed out on. Proofread and edit. This is definitely one of the most important parts of an email. So before you send it off, one thing that I do is just read it to yourself. How does this sound? Is there a flow? Does this make sense? Are there any grammatical errors? There is an app that you can download, an extension that you can get for Chrome called Grammarly. And this has saved me, I think, every single day since I've downloaded it, to be honest. Grammarly is an amazing tool to take advantage of. Like I said, it's free, which makes that even, who doesn't want free at this time? So please make sure that you take a look at that as well. Just go onto Google, type in Grammarly extension, and it's something you can link to your Chrome if that's what you use. And it will do the work for you, basically. If there's a comma that needs to be added in somewhere, it will support with that. If there's a word that needs to be capitalized, it will do that for you as well. And it is kind of nice to kind of have that second pair of not necessarily eyes, but just something else doing another screening of your email before you send it out. Next is for emails, we want to make sure we're using a professional email address. So this is really important. I remember a few years ago, I had a client and the resume was I love Ed Sheeran at hotmail.com. And this was their only email address that they had. This was considered, in their eyes, their professional email for job searching purposes. So, of course, there was a conversation in regards to, basically, please create a new email, first and last name preferred. Um, and yeah, definitely will allow the employer to form some kind of bias if they come across an email and you're trying to, portray yourself as a professional. But yeah, usually first name, last name is the best way to go about it. And then even a signature. So whether you use Outlook, if you use Gmail, they all give you the option to create a signature. So what I would recommend doing is you can have your name, you can have your LinkedIn profile, depending on your industry or your background. You could have a link to your portfolio, maybe you have a GitHub profile. All of these things will definitely reflect well when you send out that email to whoever it is. Perfect. So next we're going to talk about what exactly do we want to include within our email. So you can take a few seconds, a few minutes actually to read through here. So I'll just leave that for the section on the right for you to take a look. But of course, we want to start with an introduction, take a little bit of time to explain who you are, why you might be interested, and ensuring that you are tailoring your message as well. So if we go to this person's LinkedIn profile, if we go to the company's page, we will always be able to find a little bit of information or a few points that we can include in our initial email that we're sending out. State your purpose. So please be clear as to why you are reaching out. So whether this is about a position that you saw, you're looking for support or advice, do not simply demand. So this is something that I try to coach my clients on is we want to make sure that there is basically an added benefit to the person that we are reaching out to, right? We are hoping that they can support us with our job search. We are hoping they can support us with a referral. So we want to ensure that we also offer something to them as well, rather than, here's my resume, help me find a job. Of course, if that's the long-term goal, it does take time to build out your relationship and rapport until you reach that point. So include any specific achievements or skills that show that you were valuable to the recruiter or their company. Call to action. So we want to encourage a response by including a call to action. So this could be asking for a brief meeting, feedback, and further information. So if we take a look here at the email on the right, one of the things that catches my eyes right away, just from an initial look, is that they have even a number that they mentioned. For me, I'm someone who loves when a resume has numbers where we have quantified information, if we're referring to a volume of calls that were made or an increase of, maybe you've been getting positive feedback or surveys. So that's something really great to include. It does help the employer understand a little bit more as to what type of work you were doing when you were there. So 5 things to check before hitting send. So the first one is your subject line clear and relevant? Does it summarize the main purpose of your email? Next is, have you verified that the recipient address is correct? Next is, have you reviewed the email for professionalism in terms of tone? We want to ensure that we're avoiding any slang, casual language and emojis, of course. And of course, we want to make sure we're using the uppercase beginning of sentences and the word, I, right? So it's something lowercase I, everything is capitalized. If there's a period, that means the next word will start with a capital. Next is, have you proofread the email for any spelling or grammatical errors? These can definitely create a negative impression. So if you have, attention to detail on your resume and I receive an email that is full of grammatical errors, I'm definitely going to question that a little bit because that shows me that you do not have attention to detail if you're sending me an email that is riddled with errors throughout. Lastly, is if you mention any attachments, have you checked that they are included and are the correct files? So I know when we're job searching, we might have multiple copies of resumes saved in our documents or downloaded. I've had situations where people have sent the wrong resume to the wrong employer, and that doesn't look good at all, right? So if we're aiming to apply to Rogers and we send a resume that says Bell on it, how would that look to the recruiter or whoever is taking a look at our resume? So just ensure that everything is titled correctly. Usually before you send an email and maybe you forgot to provide an attachment, a prompt will show up and say you stated that you attached something, but there's no attachment. So that's helped me out a few times where I may have forgotten to include that information. So do we have any questions so far? Does anyone have any concerns as to okay, I see one here from Paul. It says, is it okay to attach my educational documents in my cover letter? So are you referring to a certification or your diploma or a degree? I'm gonna assume yes, because you said educational documents. So I would say no. That's not necessarily the norm to include that within your cover letter. If it's in your resume, you have provided that, you graduated back in 2019, April of 2019, then that should suffice. Some employers request like your transcripts. So I'm assuming then that's when you would provide that information. And then from there, of course, if you have your transcripts provided, then that tells us that you have completed the program. I think we have another one that came in. If I really forget to attach the files with my email, Will it be okay if I send another email again with the attachment to the recruiters and mention to them that in my previous email, I forgot to attach them? So that's kind of what we're talking about today, is that we're hoping that doesn't happen too often. Again, ever so often, we do forget, it does slip our mind. But that's why before we hit send, we want to take a little bit of time to review our email before we send it off. So ever so often, if it does happen, you can apologize and provide that information to them, especially if they are anticipating that they will be receiving your resume. But again, take a little bit of time, and we want to basically decrease the amount of times that that will be taking place. Why there's no mic or camera option? So yeah, in the beginning of the workshop, we stated that everyone is muted right now and your cameras are off. If you do have a question that you would like to ask, you could just let us know and we can unmute you, or you could type your question in the chat. Perfect. So, how to address the employer in a gender inclusive manner? Um, so do you already have, like, are we assuming that you have the information already? And I find that usually in signatures from companies and the employers, they usually include pronouns within that subject, within their signature. I have found that that is becoming a bit more common to include that information in there. How much time is the webinar? So it's for 1 hour from 7 to 8. Um, Most of the jobs on Indeed ask for supporting documents. What are these documents they are asking for? Um, I'm gonna assume possibly a cover letter. What do you think, Katerina, about the supporting documents?
So yeah, usually it's a cover letter, or if there are like any, it really depends on the job, right? Like if maybe like a portfolio, right? Like any projects that you worked on, any, like certificates that might be relevant to the job. So
Mhm.
I think for this really depends on the job. And honestly, if you don't see that they're looking for a cover letter, because usually we'll say supporting documents and we'll have like an example in brackets. If you don't see like uh explanation, I would recommend maybe like attach a cover letter. But if you don't have anything else to attach, like that's okay, you can leave that blank. But again, I feel like it will be explained. Usually if it says like supporting documents, it will tell you whether like to attach like certificates or like something to that will kind of like they will learn more about you. So I think this is more like for like IT or like roles where like you will show them a portfolio, right? Like if you're like in a marketing role or stuff like that. But yeah, if you don't see anything that like applies to you, it's okay like not to attach anything.
Perfect. We have a question here that says, as a graduate architect, would it be okay to attach the portfolio alongside resumes and cover letter? So I know usually if someone does have a portfolio, they would like to show the employer. The most common thing that I have seen is that at the heading and the top of your resume, you will have your, city, phone number, email, LinkedIn, and then there will be an area like just hyperlink this information. It will be like portfolio. And then that's when you can click on that to see the additional information. That's what I have usually seen, to be honest. Unless within the application online, they do have a separate area for you to attach this information. That's another option as well. So either within the resume linked on top and the kind of the banner up there, or before you hit submit, they do have an area where you can provide that information. Is it okay to say dear recruitment coordinator in your cover letter? Um, what are your thoughts, Katerina, on this?
I So here's the thing. If you know like who you're like sending your cover letter, right? I would like address them by their like first name and last name. Let's say you know like the name of the recruiter. You don't have to say like dear recruitment coordinator. You can say dear first name, last name, and then add their title at the bottom. So first line will be like, let's say dear Katerina Petrovska, title HR manager, and then if you have like the address of the company, add that. If you don't know, let's say who you're like sending your cover letter, I would say human resources department. I think that would be like the easiest, so you don't have to like guess or like like address that to the wrong person. I don't see like any issues even if you say like dear recruitment coordinator, right? Most of the people like just don't pay attention that much to that. They will like look at your like cover letter, but also it's important not to make like this type of mistakes that might cause like not get like an interview, right? Everybody's a little bit different when they recruit, and really depends on the role. They'll be like, if you're applying for like, I don't know, a role where you will have to like constantly post on social media or like email other people, so maybe they will pay attention how you will address the cover letter, right? So if you don't know the name of the person and you don't know their job title, I would address it to like human resources department or like hiring manager. Like that's even better, like dear hiring manager. And then in that way, like you don't have to worry, right? Like I think whoever is the recruiter for that job, whoever is hiring, it's called the hiring manager, so then you're not going to make a mistake.
Perfect. Thank you. I know that we had a follow-up from the previous question about what if we are unaware of their pronouns. So I would just, if they have sent you an email, I would just refer to them as the first name that they have on there. Just continue to use that, just to be safe.
And I
Uh,
just want to say, sorry, Tiffany,
Go
my
ahead.
experience, like if let's say sometimes it happens like to make a mistake because you don't know, 99%, like of the time, like the person will correct you. So you just know like how to address them in the future. And they don't, like they don't take offense and they're not going to like be mad at you. As long as when they correct you, you just like follow what they say and moving forward, you address them how they like told you to address them, then you won't have any issues. So, like if you're not sure like how to address them, just go with something more like gender neutral. But if you make a mistake, my experience, like 99% of the time, people were always really nice. They will tell me. And then, like I will like address them moving forward, like how they want me to.
Perfect. We have another question in the Q&A. So it says, how do I message prospective recruiters or team leads on LinkedIn? I recently applied for a position advertised by the regional head. I saw the position on his post and expressed my interest. I applied and connected, but I'm confused on how to let him know that I applied for the position. So this is definitely a really good question. Um, I would basically start with introducing yourself. Of course, we want to talk about why you're interested in the role, uh, maybe why you would be a good fit. And then again, I'm not saying to 100% rely, but you can even use ChatGPT, right? Again, when we do have an answer generated by AI, it may not always seem like it is formed or created by a human. So just be mindful of that as well, right? So if you do need that support with drafting a message, even just going on to Google and putting in messages to send recruiters on LinkedIn, you will have so many different examples to pick and choose from. And then, of course, whatever suits your style, the language, the way you carry yourself, the way that you speak, you can always pick one and you can always make some tweaks and changes to them. That's where I would get started. Maybe after continuously doing this for some time, you can see, okay, this is the type of response that gives me the most traction. I usually get a lot of responses when I include this or I don't include this, and then you can continue to move forward with that. But if you have already connected with this individual, they've accepted your invite, your connections on LinkedIn already, that's a really great start. But I'm happy to hear that a lot of the times people just apply online, they leave it alone, they hope for the best, it gets lost, and then you get of course, that rejection email. But if you are applying online, and then making that additional effort online on LinkedIn, to me, that tells someone who's eager that this person is eager, they want to work. It's always a good thing, I find, to have that additional step involved. Perfect. So any other questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or Q&A. I'm just going to go ahead and continue with a few more slides that we have. So next, we're going to go over the few examples that we have about what is considered a good versus a bad response or email. Please feel free to type in the chat what you believe, which category this falls under. Alrighty. It says, "Hi Kumar, I saw you joined Google a year ago. How have you enjoyed the work environment and the IT department since starting with the company? I'm starting a job search myself, and Google is one of the top companies on my list, but I always have to ask firsthand about the environment at the company. I'd love to hear your insight." So do we think this is a good email? Do we think this is a bad email? Bad email? Good.
Somebody says good, but missing the introduction. Bad, too casual. I think it's too personal for our first connection. No introduction. Good, bad. I like that we have like different
I
opinions.
know. It's very interesting. Not professional. Okay. All right. So we'll just keep this one in mind as we go through the other examples. So some people said this was a bad email, but let's take a look at the next one and see what we might feel about it. Okay. So you can take a few seconds or a few minutes to read this one. Let me know what your thoughts are. This is even worse. Yeah, please, like, yeah, I've had many people email me with please spelled like that. Have people spelt my name wrong, even though it's in my email, it's in my signature. People respond back and they spell my name. I've had my name spelled like Typhany, like just totally different from what I have in my email. So not professional, grammatical errors. Yeah. So Grammarly would benefit this person a lot. So if they had Grammarly downloaded, this would look like an entirely different email. Okay. Yeah, shortened words. I've actually received emails like this as well. So definitely this calls for a coaching conversation. All right. What about this one? What do we think about this? Okay, so this one is good. You will be getting the recording as well. Professional, shows interest, done research, absolutely.
I can see that a lot of people are saying you had to introduce, you had to introduce.
Mhm.
So we're assuming that, like this is maybe like your connection and people can also see your name when like like the invite or the message pops up. So even if you don't introduce yourself, like it's okay, in my opinion. I'm not sure. Like Tiffany, like what do you think? I don't think it's
Yeah.
a bad
It,
thing because they can see your name.
Yeah, the name part, maybe not so much, but I do see in the second sentence they talked a little bit about their background, that they just completed this degree and what they're considering doing. And again, this is the initial message that they're sending out. So maybe they end up setting up a Zoom meeting, maybe they end up setting up a phone call. That gives you additional opportunity to share more about yourself. And honestly, when it comes to these messages, everyone has their own personal bias as to what they think is good, what they don't think is good. The first example that we showed you was meant to be a good one, but it was very interesting to see that some people felt like, you know what, this was actually not a good one. So just keep it in mind. I would say the biggest thing is the grammatical errors. Is this worded correctly? Does this make sense? Is there a flow to this email or this message that you're sending out? If they respond back, you can always respond back more and say, oh, I actually forgot to mention this in my first message to them, and then quickly include it there. But this is an example of something good.
And I just want to add, like, this is an actual example that when you're looking for a job and when you're job searching, that you don't have to like go and just focus on like the smallest things. And I'm saying this because when I was job searching, I remember I was job searching for like 5 months. And
Mm.
because I was not getting like any response, I started to like nitpicking, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't mention my name. Oh my goodness, I had to do this. So honestly, no, when you find a job and when you start like working, you will see how like there is no like one template that fits everything, like everything, like you can apply and like send different messages and they can still be professional. So like Tiffany said, as long as like it looks professional, there are no grammar spelling, there are no mistakes, you are like introducing yourself, kind of like you're starting a conversation, it's okay. So even though like these people didn't say, hey, my name is, that's totally fine. There's so many messages that I'm getting on LinkedIn from like CEOs, company owners, and they will say, hey, Katerina, at our company, we do this, this, and this, and this. I see that you're like the HR manager, like one-to-one rehab. That's the company that I work for. I would love to have a chat with you. They don't even introduce yourself, but their message is still like personable but also like professional. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes I know it happens when you don't get like response, and when you don't get interviews, you're thinking that the smallest things are the reason why you're not getting the interviews, but that's not the case. So maybe sometimes it's okay not to overthink that much.
Absolutely. Perfect. Let's go over our last example that we have here. So let's take a look. What do we think about this one? Do we think this is a good one? Bad? Yeah, so one of the things we talked about is having that um basically not going there like, I need this. Can you do this? Tell me this. We want to have a little bit of a conversation, build up the rapport before we begin putting in those requests. This one is definitely a little bit more tricky, I would say, to figure out, is this good or bad? But my personal bias is if this is the first time that we are ever connecting and speaking, um, you know, you already want me to look at your resume and you already want me to advise you on salary expectations. What is the added benefit here for the both of us? So that's just my bias. That's just how I would think about this. Yeah, so You can definitely at some point get to the spot where you're asking certain things and these types of questions. But if this is your first ever email or message to someone, then maybe don't go in with, asking and expecting these things to be done the first time around, right? So we want to take some time before we feel comfortable enough to do that. Yeah, can you? It doesn't sound professional at all. And we're hoping that, you know how to conduct salary research on salary. Google is there, Glassdoor is there, StatsCan is there. We're hoping that you are also able to conduct some labor market research, before coming to someone and asking them what they think you should be getting paid. Yeah, Robert Half, that's also really good too. Perfect. Okay. All right, so I know we have a few questions in the Q&A. We can go ahead and get started. Any other questions that come up, please feel free to put them in the chat. I believe there were some other questions in there, but they got lost. So please feel free if you want to just copy paste or re-ask your question. I'll just go ahead and get started with what is in the Q&A right now. So I have applied for many vacancies, but never received interview calls or even received any response from the employer. I used to apply through company websites only. How to rectify the problem with my applications? I'm not sure where I'm going wrong or doing wrong. So definitely it is good to apply directly through the company website. I highly encourage that if you have a little bit of a target list or a target employer list. Be open to other websites as well. My personal favorite is LinkedIn. That's an amazing way to find opportunities to apply for, not only for the sake of opportunities, but sometimes you can even find out who is recruiting for the role. Sometimes you're able to see who is on the department, who is on the team, and you can even reach out to them as well. If you are noticing a lack of response and you're not really getting the traction from putting yourself forward, then that tells me it has something to do with your resume. So that's kind of how I gauge how people are doing in their job search process. If they're not getting any callbacks, any pre-screening calls, any technical assessments, this tells me, okay, let's go back and look at the resume because that is where the barrier might be. If you're getting interviews and you're not getting any offers, then that tells me, okay, let's book in a mock interview together and see how you present during these interviews. But yeah, uh, check up on your tailoring, make sure everything is, your resume is formatted correctly, you're using the same font throughout, the same size throughout, you're tailoring to the best of your ability. Um, Keep in mind that there is something called ATS as well, right? Our best friend in the job search process, the applicant tracking system. So just do a little bit of research on that before we submit applications, just so that you are tailoring to the best of your ability. Um, so what should I put in an email to a company regarding general career opportunities? Something like a cover letter, more like a elevator pitch. Um, so do you want to take this one, Katerina, or you?
I'm a little bit confused. I'm just like trying to understand. So is this like, do you want to like send your resume? Is this something where like I know companies say like add your resume and then if we have like any openings, you'll be in our database, but we'll like call you. Is that like what you're like asking, Owen? Because I'm just confused, like HR careers companies. Okay, yeah. So like if let's say a company says like, hey, like please like submit your resume and then we will be like recruiting for like a bunch of roles and we will like call you if something, like if your resume matches the job description. So what I would do, I would like add a generic resume because you don't have a job description to tailor it, right? So I would just add generic resume with your like most like current experience and some of the things that are like the skills that you have, right? And then the cover letter as well. So, and then I will like submit the resume and the cover letter, but try to include like pretty much like everything. So let's say, for example, in HR, like I work in HR. So I have experience in like training, payroll, health and safety, benefits, employee relations, like a compensation, performance. So I will try to kind of like add bullet points for like different things. So I kind of like cover everything that I've done because right now I don't have a job description to tailor my resume.
Perfect. Thank you. Next in the chat here, we have a question. Are there any comparable platforms to LinkedIn for online networking or interactive experiences? Not that I know of. There might be industry-specific websites, industry-specific forums that you are able to join. So even on LinkedIn, if you can search like data analyst, SQL, Python, and go to groups and then join specific groups on there. So, maybe you're someone from architectural background. Type that in, go into groups, and then you can join specific groups. Maybe introduce yourself. Maybe you have a few peers that you can meet who live within the same area. Maybe you went to the same school together. So that's what I usually recommend is if you're looking for something a little bit more specific to your industry and background, you can still use LinkedIn, but just try to join groups that are specific to your area. How to send a good follow-up email. So that's a good question. I would definitely start with maybe thanking the people who interviewed you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience. Maybe there's something that you enjoyed about the process. And then basically end it off with, you're hoping to hear, or if they have any other questions, if they are requesting additional information, that you would be more than happy to provide that. I find with follow-up emails, we want to keep it short. We don't want to provide, paragraphs upon paragraphs on the process, just short and sweet and to the point. Um, how receptive are recruiters with Plum? I'm not familiar with that. Um, are you familiar? Is it the Plum IO assessment? Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Me neither.
Is there any specific message to reply to a service request on LinkedIn? I have received quite a few messages on my inbox, so I was wondering what the best approach was. So service request, like is someone pitching services to you to get registered? Is it a job opportunity? Okay, they want you to work on specific services.
So I would say, like, thank you so much for reaching out. If you're interested in like what they're offering, you can just say like, I'm interested in this opportunity and I would like to learn more about, like this position or this job. So try to set up a call with them or like a Zoom meeting so you will get the details and see if this is a good fit for you. But you can have a very standard like create a template and very standard message just thanking them and just say like I'm interested, I would like to like set up a meeting so I can learn more about the service, the job, the opportunity that you are talking about. No problem. I also want to like learn what is Plum IO assessment. Is this something like IT related? Is this like something new that we don't know about? Okay, it's an AI assessment on the personality traits, best fit for jobs, and industry career assessment aptitude tests. Okay, so you're doing this assessment and then the results tells you like they tell you like if you're best fit for the job, and they kind of like do like a career assessment for you and tells you like what career path you should follow. Because if it's that, that's something that you can keep for yourself. But career path, okay. I would like keep this is good for you, but I would not like attach this like with your application. So this is something that you are doing on the side to figure out like what is the best career path for you. But I would not like include it. Maybe if you want, you can mention it during the interview if it's relevant. Tiffany, what do you think?
Yeah, I would probably hold off on it just because yeah, I'm not too familiar with the platform, but if it's something that is specifically mentioned within that job posting or job description, they're expecting you to already have that completed, then yeah, by all means, go right ahead.
Any other questions? We have 10 more minutes.
So does anyone have any interviews coming up? Has anyone had any like phone calls this week from recruiters? What has it been like on your end? What are we noticing? Is anyone in the second or third or fourth round stage of interviews? I know the holidays are also coming up as well. So what I have usually noticed is, it slows down a little bit around that time. So I'd be curious to see what you're noticing on your end. Okay, perfect. So we have a question here. It says, when we apply to a job on LinkedIn, there's a meet with the recruiter. So do we have to send a message there, or is it okay if I send a connection request with a note? Um, Usually I have not done this myself personally. I know usually when I do come across job postings, you do see the recruiter. I would probably go ahead and send an invite, like go ahead and send the connection. Before you send it, I think you might have an option to to send a few lines and with your invitation. So I would definitely encourage you to go ahead and do that before sending out the invite.
So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Yes.
If I don't hear back from the recruiter after messaging, emailing them, what else can I do? Should I message them after 1, 2 weeks to follow up, or should I be patient and continue to wait, assuming they are busy and they doesn't manage to have the time to reply yet? So here is the thing, like when you work with recruiters, some of them are really great. They're responsive, they will like respond to your emails, calls, or they will let you know. Some recruiters might ghost you, and that is not the great like a good thing to do, but they do that. So I always say like try to like email them. After emailing them, follow up one more time, and then if you don't hear from them after like 2 emails, that means that like 99% of the time maybe your resume is not like a good match for them, right? Or they don't have like a job that might be like a good fit for you, right? So like I would not waste my time and like focus my energy on that recruiter. I will just like keep like, like applying, like meeting new people, and like work with like different recruiters. So I feel like kind of like their silence sends you like a message. If they're busy, yes, it's okay. Like even like 1, 2, 3 days, even a week. But after a week, if they think that you would be a good fit for one of the jobs that they're hiring, I'm telling you, they will reach out to you.
Perfect. Next, we have a question. Is it professional or not to ask in the end of the interview about the salary and the work if it's full-time or part-time? So when it comes to salary, I usually recommend holding off until the employer mentions that information. that is when you would probably say something. If you're applying for a role, hopefully you are aware of the salary. I know a lot of times people don't include this on the postings, but that's where you can do your research on Glassdoor. You can familiarize yourself what is the market standard for this type of role, this type of company, what should you be expecting? So I would always wait for the other party to mention something first before we talk about salary expectations. If it's full-time or part-time, definitely you would want to know that information. So they always give you time at the end of an interview to ask any questions. So that's when you could ask, is this hybrid? Is this fully remote? Is this full-time, part-time? What are the, expected hours that I will be working every single week? I have another question that we have is, I had a phone call interview and never heard from the recruiter again. I don't know what I did wrong. So you probably didn't even do anything wrong. I do find sometimes this ghosting is quite common from some recruiters. Maybe you had an amazing conversation, maybe you had an amazing interview, and unfortunately, sometimes they just don't get back. It's something that falls through the cracks, unfortunately. You probably did not do anything wrong, but if you have an email, you could also follow up and say, hey, just following up on our conversation that we had last week. I was very interested. Is there anything else that I could provide at this time? Just to maybe they forgot. Maybe you sending that email to them will prompt them to go back and say, "Oh, yeah, you know what? We forgot to get back to David. We really liked him." And, whatever the case may be, right? So, yeah, probably you did not do anything wrong. Just send that initial email again and remind them that, "Hey, what is the update here?" We have another question. It says, during jobs interview, the more I lie, the more chances of securing the job. The reverse is true. Do you advise me to lie? Absolutely
No.
not. Yeah, I have had some situations where um people don't have data analyst experience and they put on their resume they've worked at Deloitte as a data analyst, they've worked at RBC as a data analyst because they believe having those jobs and those companies on their resume will support them in securing employment. And then I asked them, I was like, well, what if the recruiter wants to call these references? Who are you going to give? And are you actually capable of doing the job that well? Because yes, you can maybe obtain the job, maybe you can give a friend a call, but the way that you work, the way you carry yourself, the quality of work that you're, providing will definitely at some point show for itself. And yeah, I don't encourage that.
Me neither.
Uh, okay. So someone said, I think I heard you talking about it, but I'm not sure. What's the best follow-up message after applying for a job? And what's the best timing for an email? So, if you were talking about LinkedIn, I would probably send something over maybe right away if you can find the recruiter for that specific company. And the best timing for the email, if you have the contact information after you've submitted an application online, I would say maybe a week or so, to be honest, give them some time. Maybe, I know everyone has their own processing times and waits. Some people take a week, some people take a few days, some people take a few months. So it also depends on the company and the size of company as well. Um, let's see here. So I think in our chat, is it a positive sign if after the interview they request for your reference list? Yes. They will not be reaching out. They will not even be interested in your references if there's no chance or possibility of you securing employment at the company. So yeah, I always get excited when my clients are at the reference stages because this tells me, okay, there's a good chance that they might be receiving an offer. You have your manager, previous workmate, and your current landlord. Is that okay? Um, I would say previous manager and previous colleague are okay. Current landlord, I'm not too sure. Um, because we're talking about your professional work experience. If this is for like you're going for a new apartment, maybe then you can include your landlord. But if it's for an interview, then I'm not too sure if your landlord would be the best person in this case.
Another question. I had screening interview and the second interview with hiring manager, but I didn't hear back for a week now. Is it okay if I send a follow-up email to the recruiter, keeping the hiring manager CC'd? Is it not professional? So if you secure this job through like a recruiter, so I would only email the recruiter because the recruiter is the person that like coordinates everything. So I would not CC the hiring manager. I would only send an email to the recruiter and say, hey, just wanted to follow up. Have you heard anything back? I'm really interested in this role. So I just want to see like if like I will move on like on to the next stage. But do not CC the hiring manager, but definitely email the recruiter.
Perfect. So we have about less than 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to go over the last few slides and wrap up. So keep learning with us. So if you found this to be helpful, please attend our other sessions as well if you have more questions about a specific area. So next week, there's Ask a Recruiter, there's Q&A, there's a workshop on LinkedIn, live group career coaching, and then an immigration Q&A. So if you have any questions about that, please attend. And lastly, save time and improve your job search. So if you would like to book a session with Katerina or myself, you are more than welcome to do so as well. So some of the services that are provided are the one-on-one career coaching, LinkedIn audits, and resume and cover letter writing. If you are enrolled at a school currently, you do have an employment career center most likely, and they can also support you with this as well, because you've already paid into that along with your tuition and everything else. So please ensure that you are taking advantage of that as well.
There's
Perfect.
one question that says, can you explain a bit about walk-in resume submission? My advice is to like apply online because right now companies are not accepting resumes. If you just like go there and give them your resume, they will say, please go ahead and apply online because everything is now paperless and 99% of the time they want to keep the records in the system. So before it was something that like everybody was doing, but now like it's not that popular. So I would not recommend. I would like recommend spending that time on the job boards and applying for jobs on like different job boards like Indeed, LinkedIn, Job Bank, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. I know we didn't get through all of your questions, but if you want to book a session, please feel free and we can go ahead and do a little bit more of a deep dive. But thank you so much for joining this evening, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.